rather than the long, recalling Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, father of Indian Constitution, on his birth anniversary. I welcome you all for my today's class. Hello students. So in the previous class we have covered about the fibroid, the definitions, the types, the pathogenesis, incidence, and the secondary changes. Especially there are 5 types of degenerations we have covered, investigations, how to go with the case of a fibroid, then what are the treatment modalities. So today we will study the management of fibroid uterus. So the management of fibroid uterus can be divided into two main types. Again, the asymptomatic management and symptomatic management. Asymptomatic management is done in 75% of the patient, whereas symptomatic management is done in the fibroids having the severe symptoms. So coming to first the asymptomatic management. Fibroids detected accidentally on routine examination for complaints other than the fibroids are dealt with this. See, asymptomatic means the fibroids, as we have studied in the symptomatology, that 75% of the fibroids don't show any symptoms. They are occasionally discovered while giving treatment or while doing investigations for other problems. So if you have found such fibroids, then how to deal with such fibroids which are not producing any symptoms? First method is observation, another is a surgery. Observation: a certain diagnosis of fibroid should be a must prior to contemplating expected management. The risk of sarcomatous changes is insignificant. That means it is very less of a fibroid to become or turn into a malignant one. So that prophylactic removal of the fibroid is unjustified in asymptomatic cases. That means there is no need to remove the fibroid if it is asymptomatic. If the fibroid is not producing any symptoms, then no need to remove it. Means surgery is not at all justified in such cases. So what is the indication of expected management? If it is not producing symptoms also, but if the size is so the size is less than 12 weeks of pregnancy size, diagnosis is certain, follow-up is possible, then you can go for expected management. Periodic examination at an interval of 6 months and ultrasound evaluation annually is needed in those cases. If the symptoms of fibroid appears or it grows or increases in size, then surgery is indicated. See, you have to go for the 6 months interval periodic examination of the case, and annually you can go for a ultrasound or ultra USG. Then if the symptoms of fibroid appears, meanwhile in this duration if symptoms appear like menorrhagia, metrorrhagia, dysmenorrhea, infertility, others, and it grows or increases in size, then only surgery is indicated. If it is growing, increasing in size, then surgery is indicated. Otherwise, no need of surgery. Surgery is not at all justified in asymptomatic cases and when the size is not increasing. So coming to the symptomatic management. Symptomatic management is again divided into the medical management and the surgical management. So coming to first the medical management of the case. Medical management, that is with medicines, okay, the drugs. Drug therapy has established a firm place in the management of symptomatic fibroid. The drugs are used as a temporary palliation or may be used in rare cases as an alternative to surgery. Prior to drug therapy, one must be certain about the diagnosis. See, what is the use of or what are the aims of giving drug therapy is first the temporary palliation. Means we cannot treat the fibroid completely with the help of medicine, but we can reduce the symptoms up to certain extent, and we can also reduce the size, but we cannot completely cure the fibroid with the medical treatment. And it is an alternative to surgery. Suppose in certain cases where we cannot go for the surgery, in such cases we can take help of the medical management. That means surgery is a definitive treatment for fibroids. Surgery is the definitive treatment for fibroids. The medical management is used only for the temporary palliation or as an alternative to surgery. So before that, diagnosis is must. So what are the aims of medical management? As I have told, to minimize the blood loss, to reduce the size of the fibroid, it can be used. So to minimize the blood loss, as a temporary palliation, various drugs are used to minimize blood loss and to correct anemia, because the main or the chief symptom which is troubling in the case of fibroid is menorrhagia and sometimes the metrorrhagia, that is the excessive blood loss. In that case, patient may develop anemia. So in such cases, you can go for certain treatments like antiprogesterones like which acts opposite to the progesterone. In the one drug is there which is called as mifepristone RU486, is very effective to reduce the fibroid size and also the menorrhagia. So this drug has an effect also on the reduction of the fibroid size as well as to reduce the menorrhagia. It may produce amenorrhea. It can also produce amenorrhea. It reduces the size of fibroid significantly. So a daily dose of 25 to 30 mg is recommended for 3 months, or 5 mg daily dose is also found effective. So long-term therapy is avoided as it causes the endometrial ablation. So here the medical management with the anti-progesterone, that is mifepristone, it not only reduces the blood flow by causing the amenorrhea, but it also reduces the fibroid size, and its dose is 25 to 30 mg daily dose for a period of 3 months, or even 5 mg dose can also be given. So coming to the objectives of medical treatment, young women desirous of pregnancy. In young women where we cannot go for the surgery, in them we can try with the medicines. To improve the menorrhagia, as I have already told, to improve the menorrhagia and to correct the anemia before surgery. One more aim is to correct the anemia before surgery, we can go for the medical treatments. That means medical treatment is the first step before going for the second step, which is a surgery. And to minimize the size and vascularity of the tumor in order to facilitate easy surgery. So if the size is large and vascularity is more, then it will be difficult for a surgeon to remove that fiber or during the myomectomy surgery. So in that case, you can take help of certain medicines which help in reducing the size and reducing the blood supply to the tumor. In selected cases of infertility, to facilitate hysteroscopic or laparoscopic surgery. In cases of infertility, see if the fibroid is causing the infertility, or fibroid is associated with other conditions which are leading to infertility. In such cases also we can try with the medical treatment to facilitate the laparoscopic or hysteroscopic surgery. As an alternative to surgery in premenopausal women or the women with high risk factors for surgery, and where postponement of surgery is planned temporarily. So if you are planning because of some health conditions or health issue, if a woman is not suitable for pregnancy, then in such cases also you can go for the medical treatment, okay. Or otherwise, if you want to delay or postpone the surgery, then also you can try with the medical treatment. In that, first is antiprogesterone, mifepristone we have covered. Second, drugs drugs used to minimize the blood loss. In this, certain drugs comes like antiprogesterone, especially the mifepristone, antigonadotropins like danazol, gestinone, etc., GnRH analogs, agonist and antagonist, LNG-IUS, that is this is a device, intrauterine device. Then OC pills, combined oral contraceptive pills. Then PSIs, prostaglandin synthetase inhibitors, and SPRMS, that is a selective progesterone receptor modulators. So coming to one by one is, first is a selective progesterone receptor modulator, SPRMS. So these includes asopresinil. Asopresinil is used with success. It is a selective progesterone receptor modulator. It does not cause endometrial hyperplasia. So here the benefit of this is asopresinil, it doesn't cause the endometrial hyperplasia, and they are used as a selective progesterone receptors modulators. They act as a progesterone. Danazol can reduce the volume of a fibroid significantly because of the androgenic side effects. Danazol is used only for a period of 3 to 6 months. See, danazol causes amenorrhea. Along with that, it reduces the size of a fibroid, but it has certain side effects which are androgenic in nature. That's why it should not be used more than 6 months, for a period of more than 6 months. So usually 3 to 6 months it can be used. Danazol administered daily in a divided doses ranging from 200 to 400 mg for 3 months to minimize the blood loss and even produce amenorrhea by its antigonadotropin and androgen agonist properties. So next is GnRH and analogs. In them, two categories are there: GnRH agonist and GnRH antagonist. GnRH agonist, these drugs commonly used are goserelin, leuprolin, buserelin, and naferelin. The mechanism of action is sustained pituitary down regulation and suppression of ovarian function. So GnRH agonist, first they have a flare effect, then there will be down regulation of the pituitary. So optimal duration of therapy is 3 months. And then second is the GnRH antagonist, they directly have a down regulation on the pituitary hormones. So their names are cetorelix and ganirelix. They causes immediate suppression of pituitary and the ovaries, and they do not have the initial stimulating effect just like that of GnRH agonist. So benefits are same as that of agonist. Onset of amenorrhea is rapid here compared to the agonist. GnRH antagonists have a rapid action. They rapidly or immediately suppress the pituitary and the ovaries, so leading to amenorrhea and reduction in the hormonal level, because estrogen hormone plays a very important role in increasing the size of the fibroid. So by causing amenorrhea or by suppressing the pituitary and the ovaries, there will be reduction in the hormones also, leading to the reducing the size of a fibroid. And one more class is prostaglandin synthetase inhibitors or PSIs. These are used to relieve pain associated with endometriosis or dysmenorrhea, or also causes the degeneration of the fibroid, but they cannot improve the menorrhagia due to fibroid. They can only relieve the pain or degeneration of the fibroid, but they don't have any effect on the blood loss. Then LNG-IUS, levonorgestrone releasing intrauterine system. It is inserted into the uterine cavity. It reduces the blood loss and also the uterine size. However, this is not recommended when the uterine size is more than 12 weeks or there is distortion of the uterine cavity. See, when the uterine cavity is proper, then only the IUS systems or any copper T and all can stay in the in situ position. Otherwise, there are more chances of displacement of the devices. So if it is more than 12 weeks of size, if the fibroid size is more than 12 weeks of pregnancy, then you should not supposed to insert any intrauterine device, because of the cavity is not proper distorted. So there are more chances of displacement of the intrauterine devices. So next is preoperative therapy. It is indeed advantageous to reduce the size and vascularity of fibroid prior to either myomectomy or hysterectomy. If you are planning for myomectomy or hysterectomy, then you can go for the preoperative therapy. So the aims of preoperative therapy with the medication is to reduce the size and vascularity of the fibroids. So while operation will be technically easier for the surgeons to go for the hysterectomy or myomectomy. So in cases of broad ligament fibroid and cervical fibroid, it is very easy to remove the fibroid, but the main difficulty is in the enucleation of the tumor from its pseudocapsule, especially when performing the myomectomy for the intramural type of fibroids. That's why these therapies can be advised for a period of 3 months before posting a elective surgery. So coming to the surgical management of fibroid uterus. This includes the following. First is a myomectomy. There are different modes or methods of doing myomectomy. That is laparotomy, which is very common as one, just opening the abdomen and performing the surgery is common surgery or myomectomy. Another method is through laparoscopically. We can take with the help of laparoscope and we can perform the myomectomies laparoscopically. Hysteroscopically is the myomectomy or the surgery which is performed under the guidance of hysteroscope. With the help of hysteroscope, if you are performing a surgery, then it is called as hysteroscopic myomectomy. So there are different methods of myomectomy. And another is embolotherapy, that is laparoscopic uterine artery ligation, myolysis, that is cutting of the myomas, and endometrial ablation or hysterectomy. So these are different methods of surgical management: myomectomy, embolotherapy, laparoscopic uterine artery ligation, myolysis, that is cutting of the myoma, endometrial ablation, hysterectomy. So coming to first and the main important surgery is myomectomy. Myomectomy is nothing but it is the enucleation of myomata. Myomata is nothing but a fibroid. Okay, it is the enucleation of a myomata from the uterus, leaving behind a potentially functioning organ capable of future reproduction. See, myomata, only we are removing the fibroid here in the myomectomy, but we are trying to preserve the uterus so that she or the patient is capable for of future reproduction. She can conceive in the future. We are not going for the hysterectomy directly. We can go for the myomectomy if we want to preserve the fertility of a patient. As such, the surgeon should be satisfied with the operation designed to serve the objective. It is indeed useless to perform a hectic surgery to remove such myomata only to leave behind an uterus which is unlikely to conceive in future. So among the contraindications, few are relatively rather than the absolutes. These are the important consideration before going for myomectomy. It should be done mainly to preserve the reproductive function. See, the aims of myomectomy is, if you want to preserve the reproductive function of a woman, then you can go for the myomectomy. To wish to preserve the menstrual function in a parous woman should be judicially compiled with. So myomectomy is a more risky operation when the fibroid is too big and too many. If the fibroids are too many and too big, then myomectomy is risky. So it is better to go for hysterectomy in such cases if she has completed her family. Risk of reoccurrence and persistence of fibroid is about 30 to 50%. See, there is again risk of reoccurrence. If you have removed fibroid by doing myomectomy, then again chances of reoccurrence will be there. In 30 to 50% chances are there. Risk of persistence menorrhagia is 1 to 5%, which is very less. Risk of relaparotomy is about 20 to 25%. The chances of again repetition of the surgery. Pregnancy rate following myomectomy is about 40 to 60%. But the good thing is, pregnancy rate is after myomectomy is 40 to 60% pregnancy rates are there. That means the woman can conceive. 40 to 60% chances are there of her conception after undergoing myomectomy surgery. Pregnancy following myomectomy should have a mandatory hospital delivery, although the chance of scar rupture is rare. So, like after undergoing myomectomy, we can take patient for the normal vaginal delivery also, because the chances of scar rupture is very less in the cases of myomectomy, unlike other surgeries, major surgeries. So coming to the indications of myomectomy: persistent uterine bleeding despite medical therapy. See, first we have to try with the medical therapy. If again after giving medical therapy also the uterine bleeding is constant, then in such cases you can go for the myomectomy. Excessive pain or pressure symptoms. If pain is more or pressure symptoms are disturbing her, then you can go for myomectomy. Size, suppose size is very important. The size of a fibroid, if it is more than 12 weeks, and the woman is desirous to have a baby, even that means the fibroid is big but she wants to conceive in future, then in such cases you can go for myomectomy. Distortion of the uterine cavity without any other cause, that is recurrent pregnancy loss due to fibroid. If she is undergoing repeated abortions because of the fibroid, then you can go for myomectomy. You have to remove that fibroid. A rapidly growing myoma during follow-up. If the size is again increasing even after giving medical therapy and all, size is increasing, then you have to think of the sarcomatous changes. There are chances of sarcomatous changes, so in that case also you can go for myomectomy. And subserous pedunculated fibroid, which is considered as very risky. Why? Because there are more chances of intraperitoneal bleeding or torsion of the subserous pedunculated fibroids. So coming to the prerequisites to myomectomy: hysteroscopy or hysterosalpingography, HSG, to exclude any submucous fibroid or a polyps or a tuber block is to be done. Hysteroscopy or endometrial biopsy in cases of irregular cycles, not only to remove a polyp but also to exclude endometrial carcinoma. Examination of the husband from fertility point of view or the semen analysis is also important, because the main objective of this myomectomy is to preserve the fertility of a woman. So you have to go for the husband's examination also, whether he is fertile or not, is there any chances of pregnancy in future or not, can be predicted. Then contraindications of myomectomy, in which cases we should not do myomectomy, is infected fibroid. If it is one of the complication of fibroid where the fibroids becomes infected. Then growth of myoma after menopause. Usually after menopause the fibroid should reduce or atropic changes should occur, but if the myoma size is increasing after menopause, then also it is contraindicated for myomectomy. You have to think of the malignant changes. Then suspected malignant change or sarcoma. Parous women where hysterectomy is safer and is a definitive treatment. See, where the woman have completed her family, she already has children, that is a parous woman, so no need to go for myomectomy, you can directly go for hysterectomy, because which is a definitive treatment of fibroid is hysterectomy itself. But if you want to preserve the fertility of a woman, or if she is desirous to conceive in future, then in certain cases only you have to go for myomectomy. If a woman has completed her family, she is parous, then you can go for hysterectomy rather than going for myomectomy. Then functionless fallopian tubes, that is bilateral hydrosalpines, TO mass, tubo-ovarian mass. Decision must be judicious with the advent of microsurgery and ART. If the fallopian tubes are blocked, see, tubal block is one of the cause of infertility. If the tubes are blocked and you want to do myomectomy, then it is of no use, right? So rather than going for that, you can go for the hysterectomy. Pelvic or endometrial tuberculosis. See, tuberculosis cases also, where in such cases it's very difficult to treat the case. That means fertility ratio decreases, there are more chances of infertility, so you have to think and decide accordingly. During pregnancy or during cesarean section, see, if a woman is pregnant, then you are not supposed to go for myomectomy, or during cesarean section also it is not indicated. So coming to the surgery or procedure of abdominal myomectomy, this is a laparotomy procedure. Laparotomy means we have to cut open the abdominal wall and perform the surgery. So coming to the procedure of this surgery, abdominal myomectomy. First, the measures to control blood loss during myomectomy. Before that, you have to go for certain pre-operative treatments to reduce the blood loss. That is the pre-operative treatment with GnRH analog, that is agonist or antagonist, to reduce the vascularity of tumor and thereby reduces the operative blood loss, post-operative blood loss. This is important. And the use of vasoconstrictor agents. Commonly uses vasopressin. 20 units of vasopressin diluted in 20 ml of normal saline is injected into the myometrium overlying the myoma. This is the vasoconstrictor agent which helps to reduce the blood loss during the procedure. Then use of Victor Boni specially designed clamps. These are certain clamps which are used during the surgery to withhold the fibroid, to keep the fibroid in the position. So these are the clamps used to reduce uterine artery blood flow. This clamp is placed around the uterine vessels and the round ligament. This also reduces the blood flow to the uterine artery. And use of tourniquets to occlude the uterine vessels and also the ovarian vessels at the infundibulopelvic ligament. Okay. And sometimes controlled hypotensive anesthesia is also used to reduce the venous tone and a moderate degree of Trendelenburg position to enhance venous drainage to reduce the operative blood loss. See, these are the different types of stitches used here. Myoma before performing the surgery, and this is the uterus after undergoing myomectomy. The different stitches are used to obliterate the myoma bed. Okay. So coming to the actual steps, first the uterine incision. A single incision, linear or elliptical, in the midline of the anterior wall of the uterus is to be preferred. Here you have to take a single incision, okay, linear or elliptical, in the midline of the anterior wall of the uterus. Okay, and this is the following advantages. It avoids any injury to the tube or ovary. Lateral fibroids are removed by tunneling without any additional scar on the uterine surface, and fibroids from the cavity or posterior wall can be removed by the transcavity approach. That means you have to enter through the uterine cavity and have to remove it. No need to take extra incisions on the uterine wall to avoid scars on the posterior wall and adhesion formations. That means only with a single incision you have to remove the lateral fibroids, intramural fibroids, etc. Incision is deepened through the myometrium and the pseudocapsule till the myoma is reached. So the same incision you have to deepen through the myometrium, you have to pass into the myometrium, and then the pseudocapsule till the myoma is reached. You have to remove the pseudocapsule, enucleate the pseudocapsule until the actual fibroid is reached. The myoma, after reaching the myoma or the fibroid, you have to grasp the fibroid with a single tooth valcellum, and the dissection is continued in the plane between the myoma and the capsule. So in between the myoma and the capsule, which is a false capsule, the pseudocapsule, I have to go for the dissection, and this dissection should not be sharp. Usually it is it called as enucleation of a myoma. Myoma is enucleated from its bed by sharp scissors and the blunt knife handle dissection. Sharp with the scissor and the blunt knife handle dissection, you have to enucleate the myoma from its capsule. The myoma bed, that is a deep space, is obliterated by interrupted mattress or figure of 8 sutures. Sometimes layers of suture may be tried to approximate the myometrium. So after this, the myoma bed, that is the blood vessels, has to be obliterated by interrupted sutures. Then bony hood operation. There is one more method of performing myomectomy which is called as bony hoods operation. It is done to remove a large fundal fibroid. If the fibroid is large and on the fundal, you have to perform this surgery. A low transverse incision is made on the myoma over the anterior uterine wall. Here a low transverse incision is to be done, and after enucleation of the myoma, the capsule is trimmed and is sewn over the anterior uterine wall. This minimizes the adhesion formation. The serous coat of the uterus is approximated with a thin absorbable suture, and to prevent the adhesion over the incision, that is the interseed, oxidized cellulose or Gore-Tex, that is the surgical membrane, can be used. This is usually there are more chances of adhesion formation after any surgery. So to reduce the chances of adhesion, we can go for use interseed or Gore-Tex. The surgical membranes can be used. So coming to the complications of myomectomy, general complications of myomectomy are same as that of any other abdominal surgery, but immediate complications includes the hemorrhage, intraperitoneal hemorrhage from the uterine wound. This is very dangerous complication. Then injury to the bladder and ureter, especially with cervical or broad ligamental myomas. Injury to the fallopian tubes, interstitial portion is commonly damaged during the incision and suturing. And injury to bowel, febrile mortality due to tissue reactions or infections. Yes, coming to the vaginal myomectomy, submucous pedunculated myomas. See, what are the indications of vaginal myomectomy? Usually abdominal myomectomies are performed, but there is the indication for vaginal myomectomy also if the fibroids are submucous type, submucous with a pedicle, that means submucous pedunculated myomas are there, then you can go for the vaginal myomectomy. So submucous pedunculated myomas can be removed vaginally. So here morcellation is nothing but removal by piecemeal. That means you have to cut a large tumor. So it is needed if the tumor is large. You have to cut the tumors in small pieces and you have to remove it out. So that is called as morcellation. A moderate size fibroid can be removed by twisting method. If it is large fibroid, you have to go for morcellation. You have to cut it there only and have to remove the pieces out. Then if the moderate size fibroid is there, then you have to remove by twisting it. In that case, fibroid is grasped by a sponge holding forceps and you have to remove it by giving a twisting movement. Then another method of myomectomy is through endoscope surgery, that is hysteroscopy and laparoscopy. Hysteroscopically, generally a fibroid of 3 to 4 cm in diameter or a polyps is resected with the help of a hysteroscope. Pedicle or the base of the fibroid is coagulated using an electrocautery, or ND-LAG laser can also be used to coagulate the base, so that to reduce the chances of bleeding. Complications is perforation, fluid overload, hemorrhage and others. Then laparoscopically, subserous and intramural fibroids could be removed laparoscopically. So usually laparoscopical myomectomy is preferred in cases of subserous fibroids and intramural fibroids. Electrocautery, laser, extracorporeal sutures are used for the hemostasis. Hemostasis means to reduce the blood loss. Laparoscopic surgery is not suitable when the fibroid is large, deep intramural, multiple or technically inaccessible. Leiomyomas can be desiccated, that is myolysis, using laser or bipolar diathermy. So if it is large, then you can go for myolysis using the laser or bipolar diathermy. So this is a laparoscopic method. With the help of a laparoscopic can remove the fibroid out. Here I will show you a clip of this myomectomy procedure surgery.
The number and site of myomas should be ascertained before taking the patient up for surgery. The surgery should be planned in the post-menstrual phase so that bleeding can be reduced intraoperatively. GnRH analog or danazol pre-treatment is ideal for large myomas. With the evolution of new tissue-friendly suture materials and surgical techniques, The conventional idea of using only anterior uterine wall incisions for myomectomy has lost ground. Posterior uterine wall incisions are no longer absolutely contraindicated. The lady depicted in this video had a large posterior myoma as the reason. However, here a fusiform incision is being used over the most prominent area of the myoma. It is ideal to delineate the uterine cavity by prior.
See, this is a method of enucleation of the myoma. That means removing the capsule from the myoma or the fibroid.
Always be watchful as not to include the intramural portion of the fallopian tube. In cases where the cavity is accidentally
See, this is after removal of the fibroid, suturing is done, especially the obliteration of the bed of the myoma, and the myometrium is sutured here. This is the method of closing the uterus. In layers. This is their suturing the outermost layer of the uterus. After completely suturing the layer, abdomen is closed in layers. Another method is called as uterine artery embolization or UAE. Uterine artery embolization. It is the treatment procedures of uterine myomas. Okay, so it causes avascular necrosis followed by shrinkage of the fibroid. So it causes the necrosis because of the loss of blood supply, which is called as avascular necrosis, caused by followed by shrinkage because of the loss of blood supply to the fibroid. There will be shrinkage or the reduction in the size of the fibroid. Uterine arteries are occluded by injecting polyvinyl alcohol particles. So here we are injecting the polyvinyl alcohol particles through a percutaneous femoral catheterization. We pass a catheter from the femoral vessels and arteries which reaches to the uterine arteries, and we are injecting polyvinyl alcohol. This may be an option for the woman with symptomatic fibroid where surgery is not preferred. In a woman who is having a symptomatic fibroid where we cannot go for the surgery, in such women this method is suitable. UAE, that is a uterine artery embolization. Result: improvement of menorrhagia is observed in 80 to 90% with 60% reduction in the size. Others, relief of pressure symptoms. Complication of UAE is post embolization syndrome and pain, fever, sepsis, myometrial infarction and necrosis, amenorrhea and ovarian failure can be there. Sometimes there will be femoral artery injury at the time of procedures. Contraindications of UAE is that is the uterine artery embolization is active pelvic infections, women desirous for future pregnancy, genital tract malignancy and drug allergies. Ligation of bilateral uterine artery gives the same result as that of uterine artery embolization. See, This is a method of doing uterine artery embolization. Pelvic angiography is done. Embolization is done through the catheter. So pelvic angiography is done for the visualization and occlusion of the uterine vasculature by embolization. It stops the blood flow through the uterine artery. It results in ischemic necrosis of fibroids. PVA, that is a polyvinyl alcohol microspheres, are commonly used. A catheter is placed in the femoral artery. You can see here how the catheter is placed. A catheter is placed in the femoral artery and it is advanced to uterine artery. So through the femoral artery we are passing the catheter to the uterine artery, into the uterine artery. Women with significant symptoms despite medical management are considered for UAE. Conservation of uterus is a benefit here. The indications are in same that of the myomas after failed medical treatment. Benefit is reduction in the size of fibroid and pressure symptoms. Then this is the method. See here, polyvinyl alcohol fibers reaches the uterine artery. Through the uterine artery it passes into the fibroids and it causes the avascular necrosis of the fibroids, leading to the loss of blood supply to the fibroid, leading to the shrinkage of the fibroid. The size of the fibroid starts reducing. I'll show you a clip.
Has been produced to familiarize you with the uterine fibroid embolization procedure, UFE. UFE is a safe, effective treatment for fibroids that has been performed for nearly 20 years. It is one of several treatments that may be used to treat fibroids in the uterus. Uterine fibroids are non-cancerous growths that develop from normal uterine muscle cells. There are 4 types of fibroids that develop in or just outside of the uterus. Submucosal fibroids grow into the uterine cavity. Intramural fibroids grow within the wall of the uterus, and subserosal fibroids develop on the outside of the uterus. Pedunculated uterine fibroids occur when a fibroid tumor grows on a stalk, resulting in pedunculated submucosal or subserosal fibroids. All fibroids require a supply of blood to survive and grow. UFE takes advantage of this fact to target the fibroids. Uterine fibroid embolization is a minimally invasive procedure. UFE does not remove the uterus or the ovaries. A small incision is made in the leg to gain access to the femoral artery. A long flexible tube called a catheter is then inserted into the femoral artery. It is guided up the femoral artery and into the artery that supplies blood to the uterus, called the uterine artery. The catheter is then guided to smaller arteries that supply blood to the fibroids. Uterine fibroid embolization delivers tiny microspheres to the artery that supplies the fibroids, cutting off the blood flow, causing the fibroids to shrink. The tiny microspheres are injected through the catheter and travel through the blood vessel. Since the microspheres are more than 60 times larger than red blood cells, they plug the tiny vessels that red blood cells travel through to feed the fibroid. The procedure is repeated in the uterine artery on the other side to make sure that all blood supply to the fibroids has been cut off. All fibroids are treated simultaneously. Once the blood supply to the fibroids has been blocked, the fibroids begin to shrink. There is no scar tissue and minimal blood loss with UFE. Recurrence of the fibroids with uterine fibroid embolization is rare. Most women are able to return to light activity within a few days of the UFE treatment.
Yeah, so that was the procedure of uterine artery embolization. Another techniques are magnetic resonance guided focused ultrasound waves. So we are using the focused high energy ultrasound waves in which helps in coagulation necrosis of the myoma. So with the help of waves we are again causing the necrosis, which is called as coagulation necrosis in the fibroids. It causes localized thermal ablation of the fibroid tissue. It may need multiple treatments, which causes less pain compared to the UAE, and it has less post-operative complication. It is a safe and feasible and minimally invasive procedure. Contraindications are abdominal wall scars, uterine size more than 34 weeks, desirous for future fertility are the contraindications to MRI. So MRI, resonant guidance focus ultrasound waves, are used to cause necrosis and thermal ablation to the fibroid tissue. Next and the last resort is nothing but the hysterectomy. Hysterectomy is a definitive treatment. It is in fact is the operation of choice in the symptomatic fibroid. This is considered as the operation of the choice in a symptomatic fibroid which is producing more symptoms, where there is no valid reasons for the myomectomy. The patient over the age of 40 years and in those not desirous of future or further children are the classical indications. So a woman who has completed family and she is 40 plus of age, in them you can directly go for hysterectomy rather than going for myomectomy. And there are again different types of hysterectomy, like total hysterectomy, subtotal hysterectomy, that is only the uterus is removed, sometimes ovaries are removed. You have to take the decision accordingly. Advantages of hysterectomy is there is no recurrence, no chances of reoccurrence, because we are cutting, we are removing the uterus directly, so there are no chances of reoccurrence, unlike in other surgical methods. And next, a pathology and unhealthy cervix can also be removed. Place of vaginal hysterectomy, fibroids with a size of 10 to 12 weeks of pregnancy associated with the uterine prolapse are better dealt with the vaginal route. So there are different methods of hysterectomy, that is through the abdominal route and through the vaginal route. Vaginal hysterectomy can be done if it is associated with uterine fibroids and the fibroid size is more than 10 to 12 weeks of pregnancy. So you can go for the vaginal hysterectomy with the repair of the pelvic floor is the choice of operation. And last one is emergency surgery. When to go for emergency surgery? When it is causing severe bleeding. In such cases you can go for the torsion of the subpedunculated subserous fibroids. In such condition you can go for the emergency surgery, like torsion of subserous pedunculated fibroid, massive intraperitoneal hemorrhage following the rupture of the veins over subserous fibroid, uncontrolled infected fibroid, and uncontrolled bleeding in the fibroid. These are the indications of emergency surgery. Emergency means where you have no time to decide, you have to take patient to save the life of a patient. If there is torsion, if there is intraperitoneal massive hemorrhages, if there is uncontrolled infection which may lead to septicemia, if uncontrolled bleeding in the fibroid, then patient may go into the shock. So in such cases you can go for the emergency surgery. Either myomectomy or hysterectomy is to be done emergency. The second type of fibroid is cervical fibroid. Symptoms: in non-pregnant state, the symptoms are predominantly due to pressure effects on the surrounding structures. Anterior, there are different types, again anterior, posterior, central and lateral of the cervical fibroids. Anterior cervical fibroids can cause the bladder symptoms like frequency of micturition or even retention of urine. And retention is due to pressure because of the elongation of the urethra. So it produces a pressure on the bladder and the urethra. So you will find the urinary symptoms in the anterior cervical fibroid. Posterior cervical fibroid, yes, as it is present on the posterior side of the cervix, so it produces a pressure on the rectum, so it produces a rectal symptoms in the form of constipation or sometimes diarrhea etc. will be there. The lateral cervical fibroids, they are present laterally, right or left side. They causes the vascular obstruction which may lead to hemorrhoids or edema of the leg sometimes, and ureter is pushed laterally or below the tumors most of the times. Then central cervical fibroids. Central fibroids produces predominantly the bladder symptoms. The cervix is expanded on all sides. Because the cervix is expanded on all the sides, so more chances of producing the bladder symptoms. The uterus sits on the top of the expanded cervix. Here it looks like the uterus is sit on the expanded cervix. See in this figure you can see this in the diagram. See how the central cervical fibroid, it looks like uterus is sitting upon the enlarged cervical fibroid in cases of central cervical fibroid. In pregnancy it remains asymptomatic but produces insuperable obstruction during the labor. Okay, fibroid arising from the vaginal part of the cervix may remain asymptomatic during non-pregnant states but produces obstruction during labor, as they are causing the obstruction in the passage, so they may cause obstruction during the labor. If pedunculated, there may be sensation of something coming down, or if infected, a foul smelling discharge per vagina is seen in cases of central cervical polyps, fibroid, sorry, arising from the vaginal part of the cervix. See in this diagram you can see the body of the uterus, cervical fibroid, elongated cervix and vagina. Coming to the treatment, supravaginal fibroids, myomectomy may be tried if the patient is young and desirous of having a baby. But if it is not only technically difficult, but the anatomical and functional restoration of the cervix may not be adequate to achieve the objectives of future reproduction. In as such, mostly it is dealt with the hysterectomy. The principle to be followed is enucleation followed by hysterectomy to minimize the injury to the ureter. So there are more chances of ureteric injury in cases of myomectomy. If you want to go for myomectomy in cervical fibroid, so it is more chances of injury to the ureter. So you can go for the enucleation of the fibroid first, leading afterwards hysterectomy. Preoperative GnRH analogs administration for 3 months facilitates the easy surgery. And coming to the vaginal parts fibroids, if the tumor is sessile, myomectomy. If it is pedunculated with, if it is having pedicle, then polypectomy, because it will become easy if because they can come out through the cervix and with the pedicle, so it is easy to remove such fibroids. So there you can go for polypectomy. Just like a polyps, you can remove the vaginal part fibroids. Yes, this completes a topic, fibroids, uterine and cervical fibroids. Thank you.